Well, good afternoon, everybody. The Coinroutes team is here for another This Week in Crypto recap. It is Friday, November 17th. I'm Dave Weisberger.
I'm Carl Savage.
And Carl, why don't you kick us off with a market recap?
So, as I predicted 2 weeks ago, Bitcoin has been steadily treading in the upper 30K range, down 1.7% on the week. Ethereum took a bit of a bigger hit because it rallied so hard last week. It down 5%. The NASDAQ and S&P both up around 2%. Gold is up 2% and the dollar down 1.5%.
So basically, crypto completely uncorrelated to other assets for yet another week.
Yep.
People always forget this, but that is very relevant. Ether, clear, buy the rumor, sell the news as far as the ETF filing, because one of the news stories we'll talk about, actually, let's talk about it now. BlackRock officially filed for their Ethereum ETF. Okay, Snoozeville, we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, no big deal. But the fact is you were right, and the market is being range bound. And the one point I will make is the longer the crypto markets stay in a range, the more likely it is that it will exit that range with violence. And we all know that I think the violence will be to the upside. I could be wrong, and we shall see. But it's basically tightening the spring. And when you talk about markets, that really matters. We did see something interesting this week. I forgot to mention it before, but we had 2 days where we had a down day and we had an up day. And what was fascinating about it, and one of the days had a down and up day, and the liquidations that we've seen on the short side are actually stronger than the liquidations on the long side proportional to the moves, meaning there just isn't a lot of long side speculation. That means there's less of a buffer, there's less of a supply overhang if it gets moving. And the short side liquidation is indicating that the short side is a slightly more crowded trade. Now, those are probably very technical traders, right?
Absolutely. Well, one of the most interesting things is that, last time this happened with the Bitcoin ETF getting approved, or not approved, but filed in Delaware by 21 Shares I Trust, is, Bitcoin took off. It ripped $6,000 or whatever. Ethereum didn't have a similar reaction this time. And I think that, a lot of people see some news and just dial up that leverage button and start to click away. And so, those of you who were positioned long probably, didn't get rewarded as much as the people who did it for Bitcoin did.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. I mean, we were looking, Coinroutes has debuted a new feature in our UI, which is a consolidated book depth characterization. And so, we've been working with that, and we've seen some really powerful signals in the short run when you see the books of like the tether pairs and the dollar pairs all kind of together. And we just haven't seen that in Ethereum nearly as much as we've seen it in Bitcoin.
The great thing about it is once you can aggregate market data across many exchanges and you can see the weight of the book, on one exchange, that's one thing. But when you can see it across many exchanges and what the aggregation looks like, the signal's there, right? So when spot bids are piling up on 3 or 4 different perp exchanges, there's something there to be messed with, and I think our traders are going to have a lot of success.
Oh yeah, we were watching so many times in real time. Every single time there was a big move. We're going to try to videotape it before the next week, so stay tuned for that. But it is interesting because we've seen it. But let's talk about Bitcoin for a second, because the core is Bitcoin is still less than 1/20th of the price that it would be at if it really were digital gold. So it really trades like an option. So the real question is, you have to ask yourself this, and why is it that I think that the bull side is far more likely? Well, it's simple. It really is. And that is when Bitcoin was trading between 60 and 70,000 before the debacles of 22, the on-chain metrics were less than half. The network was much lower hash rate. The percentage of long-term holders was lower. Pretty much every single metric was lower. And the other thing that's different is adoption. So the first news story that we want to talk about, Jacob actually brought us up, and Jacob, who's remote today, we'll let him talk about it. But, tee it up, Jacob. Describe what you saw in Forbes about, a member of the German Bundestag actually calling for studying or floating the idea of Bitcoin being legal tender.
Dave, Carl, thank you guys for the introduction. Jacob Tober here with the Coinroutes team, dialing in this time from Colorado, not Miami. So, an extremely important article to mention. Now, before we dive into what was covered in that article, I'd like to take a step back. Let's talk about the 2 other countries that have previously accepted Bitcoin as genuine legal tender. those countries being El Salvador and the Central African Republic. Now, if you look at those countries, they needed to integrate Bitcoin. They had problems with their current monetary system, and they needed to outsource a tool that gave people hope of financial freedom within their own borders. Now, looking at Germany, Germany is a stable Western economy, and it also has one of the lowest debt ratios, which is important. So in Joana Cotar's statement, what I liked was that she addressed issues of money laundering, tax evasion, and other illicit activities that have been called out by the anti-crypto mob in recent news events. You saw that with crypto funding Hamas, which turned out to be false. The numbers were fabricated. So I liked how her statement addressed these issues, and it was proactive. So Germany to me is a pioneer in this space, and it gets me excited about seeing what Europe is doing in terms of the crypto industry. All I can hope as an American citizen is that our leadership takes note of what they're doing and they start to act in a similar fashion as Germany. Crypto's here to stay, and it's a matter of integrating it in a manner that makes sense for the current economy and that allows citizens to use it in a safe, responsible manner. Exciting things coming out of Germany. Can't wait to see what other innovation is coming out of Europe. Great things happening in the region. I'll kick it back to you guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jacob. And, just to piggyback on that real quick, Dave, what do you think the implication, we here in America, I'm more or less ignorant American for all intents and purposes. I often think about what the dollar's doing and how Bitcoin's losing parity to the US stock market. That's just me as an American. What do the global markets have? What kind of impact do those have on the price of Bitcoin and crypto in general?
Well, from an adoption point of view, it's huge because the reality is we're very privileged in America. People don't understand what having the world's reserve currency means to the average person. Yeah. But the fact is, if you go around the periphery of the world, there are more reasons to want a sound money. Now, Germany doesn't need its own sound money as much as others because they're basically the engine behind the euro. But the fact is the German central bank is the most strong to adhere in today's world to sound money principles. Yeah. So for them to talk about Bitcoin as a potential asset is fascinating because it's basically saying, we're not so sure about this whole fiat thing. But yet that's the economy with the smallest amount of debt to GDP of all the major ones.
So we think in other European countries, and we just saw this in Argentina. Maybe we could talk about that too.
Yeah. The Argentina one is really important. Sunday, after we film this, there will be an election. It's a runoff. And there are two candidates. One is the upstart who is ahead in the polls, but of course nothing is guaranteed. I'm not sure. Milei, I think he pronounces his name, but I'm not 100% sure. In any event, he is campaigning on dollarizing the economy and allowing Bitcoin as a reserve asset. That is a huge deal. That basically Argentina is 20 times El Salvador, and El Salvador created a nice pop when it went with it. So it's adoption coming from the periphery, but it matters because once Bitcoin gets to a certain amount of critical mass, physicists will call it escape velocity, call it whatever you want, but when it gets to a certain amount of critical mass, its ascension to start rivaling gold becomes almost inevitable. Well, considering it would literally be 15 to 20 times price appreciation from here for that to happen, It makes a very asymmetric upside. It makes all the intraday squiggles that we follow and trade almost seem irrelevant. The fact is, however, it's not going to go there in a straight line.
So we've seen Germany, we've seen, what could be in Argentina, and also Vivek here. We've seen it now with potential U.S. candidates starting to lay out what their crypto framework would look like. Vivek just did this with his 3 freedoms of crypto. So promising things across the board. I wanted to ask you a quick question, and this is kind of a curveball. So what happens if, all these spot ETF approval or filings get denied? What are the implications of that? And, would that prolong the bear market that we have experienced over the past
I think
years?
If all of them get denied, effectively, we probably have a 3 to 6 month pause on price action. Probably you see a bit of a retracement. The truth of the matter is they're inevitable at this point. The fact is whoever wins the next presidential election, and it almost doesn't matter at that point because the SEC chair doesn't go. The next SEC chair isn't going to allow this to happen. There are people in Congress on both sides of the aisle who aren't going to put up with it because it literally is absurd. It's hurting American investors. It would turn crypto into a campaign issue. So yeah, the initial reaction would be horribly negative, but the fact is it would be the buying opportunity of a generation, because at that point, you actually are going to turn Bitcoin into a campaign issue, and you would never expect that to be the case.
Well, because you see what happened here this week with XRP fake ETF news. I don't know if you saw that, but
Yeah,
some person or group fake filed, totally bogus, fake filed an ETF, or not ETF, but a iShare Trust fake entity in Delaware, similar to what 21 Shares has done, and XRP popped 12%. And I think that goes to show that this is a thin market. People are over leveraged, and any kind of a narrative around this can really spoof the markets in one way or the other. And so
I'll tell you, I was on Crypto Town Hall, and I made 2 points about this. I mean, point number one, it shows something that should not be the case, and several Congress people have made this point. The SEC should never be in the business of moving markets. Maybe in a public company, if they unearthed bad activity before the public knew about it, which almost never happens. They generally sue them after the fact. But to the extent that the SEC does something, it is extremely rare. And as a job of protecting investors and facilitating capital formation, they should never be in the job of moving markets. Yet, here we are in crypto, where they absolutely move markets. Even rumors about what the SEC will do moves markets. That's wrong.
I don't know if you can blame the SEC.
Well, you can.
But
if the SEC treated crypto the same way they treated precious metals, which there's absolutely no reason to argue they shouldn't, because crypto is more transparent, then we wouldn't have this problem. Frankly, there wouldn't be all this anticipation. You would have had these products years and years ago. Some would have succeeded, some would have failed, and we would have seen where it goes. But the problem is that they've made themselves the story, and they really shouldn't be. It's like when you watch a football game, how mad are you when the refs are the story?
Piss me off.
Everybody. Doesn't matter, winner or loser. Doesn't matter if you win. Doesn't matter if you lose. I mean, if you win, you don't care as much, but you kind of look at it and say, this is probably not a good thing. The SEC shouldn't be that. But the second thing that's really, and this is what really chaps me, we saw this with FTX, is the SEC should be able to track down manipulators of markets. Now, if you didn't push all trading in XRP overseas, then, and if in fact we had a regulator here in the most liquid market, then the likelihood is whoever did this to profit off of it, it will be much easier to track them down.
Yeah.
As it is, let's hope they do track them down, because manipulation is bad. Manipulation undermines confidence in markets. And there's no doubt it was a bad thing to happen. We've seen lots of bad things happening. It doesn't matter. Gold companies claim they have a strike in a load, or an oil company. We see all sorts of fake news causing market manipulation. The difference is in crypto, because all of the trading happens overseas, and certainly most of it anyway.
For now.
Well, in XRP at least, because of that whole case. The fact is it's really hard to find the bad guys.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like once an ETF gets approved, all of the, I don't know, it's some $30 trillion of investment managers who are managing money out there that's totally sidelined and would be able to have access to this.
It's true. And the other thing that's really important is having the ability for real regulation, as opposed to let's figure out who we can take out this week by some vagueness. Someone once made a comment. There's a very famous expression, don't remember the exact quote, but more or less it boils down to dictators and tyranny loves ambiguity, because that allows them to do whatever the hell they want. So clarity of rules allows for a better, more meritocratic, I'm not sure if that's right, and democratic approach to markets, which tends to be better. And that's really what we care about. But look, we're going to end this, on a positive note, because we'll see what happens in Argentina on Sunday. We also have to make the point that there is a non-zero but unlikely chance that we'll get some decision by today on some of the ETFs that have been filed. Most likely it'll be delayed. The betting money is there will be approvals sometime probably in early January. There have been stories this week of the staff of the SEC.
Approvals or decisions?
approvals.
Approval.
The staff of the SEC has been talking to people about the difference, and we'll talk about this more next week if this becomes relevant, between cash and in-kind settlement of ETFs. It's very technical. Happy to explain it. We'll certainly
Let's
answer
just
questions.
hope the ETF gets approved.
Well,
one
but
way or the other.
if it does, it will be done. It's you work with the staff to get the mechanics right, and that's what they're working on now.
Absolutely. Well, as always, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. We love interacting.
Right.
Anything you want to talk about, drop it in the comments below. We'll see you next week.